Hey, so I'm getting ready for an interview that I'm going to do in a couple of hours. So I'm setting up my equipment. Keep watching because I think you'll find this interesting. G'day, welcome back to Bootlosophy. If we haven't met before, my name is Tech. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that I'm working on, the Wajak people. Now, I'm about to interview the founders of Arno Shoes. They are the makers of this boot that you would have seen in one of my reviews earlier on. This is the Bliskavka side zip boot. Really comfortable boot. A little bit different in terms of its design from what I normally wear, but I like it. So keep watching and we'll head into the interview. Hey, so I'm really excited to have the founders of Arno Shoes on with me tonight. Welcome, guys, Mikhail and Christine. Thanks for making the time to come and talk to me.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you so
having
much
us,
for
Jake.
your time too.
Terrific. Now, Mikhail, where are you?
So I'm right now visiting family in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia.
Georgia. Christine, where are you?
I'm here in Florence where everything began. So I stuck around after that first year that Mikhail and I met.
Right, terrific. Excuse me. So this is a really international interview, so I hope the technology holds. So let's start off. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Cool. Yeah. So my name is Mikhail Bliskavka. Of Arno Shoes. It's basically I don't know what kind of introduction we're going to go here, but in a quick recap. I'm an engineer. I got into shoes and boots in gosh, like 2014 or something like that. So I've been kind of like in this kind of world for a while. And then in 2019, I had the opportunity to go to Florence to study shoemaking, and which is where I met Christine at Stefano Bemmer. Learned shoemaking was just incredible, and then a few years later, we decided to start brand Arno shoes. So I've been kind of shoes and boots have been kind of like I don't know, my life for probably the past 5 years, but yeah, and before that. So,
Christina, what about you? What's your background?
So I'm Christine O'Leary and I'm originally from New York, but I was working in media and event production for most of my career until I moved to Florence. I was just looking for a change. And I was here, loving my time here, wanting to stay when I got a job opportunity to start working at Stefano Bemmer. They were looking for someone to just kind of be like a catch-all, work with international clients, polish shoes, and I was ready to do anything so that I could stay here. And I ended up working under what we call like the shoe finisher. So he would do all the sort of polishing. He would spiff anything up that was had like an old bespoke shoe that was sent back for repairs. He would cut leather, make tassels, lace shoes. I mean, like you name it, everything that comes at the end of the line. So I learned how to do all of those things, and even learned how to use the belt sander and put on a metal toe tap and that kind of stuff. And I just really, really loved it. And so it was at some point, like toward the end of COVID, when I reached out to Mikhail, who had already moved back to Oklahoma, but I saw that he was making shoes and all these things, and I thought like, hey, why don't we try doing this ourselves? So that's how Arno was born, basically.
It's an interesting deep dive. So Mikhail, you've gone back and started making shoes. You were just telling me a little earlier about how you were learning to make shoes.
yeah. So this is all kind of, I guess it's interesting how, and we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier, how everything kind of like aligns, the whole world aligns. But to step it back, I guess just a little bit, like I've been collecting and into shoes, nice shoes or whatever for yeah, 2013, 2014, something like that. And then, the idea came of like, making shoes. and then so I have a friend, Chuck. He's got a shoe repair shop in Tulsa, and I kind of went into a shop at one point, and we were just chatting. I was like, "Hey, can I like help you out around the office a little bit? Because this is like, I don't know, it's interesting. It's something tangible, you know." By office, I mean the workshop. Anyway, so I ended up making a pair of shoes just kind of with under his tutelage, and it was, you know, he's more of a shoe repair guy. He wasn't like really a shoemaker. Um, and that's kind of what dropped kind of the idea to go to Florence and do all that. And then when I kind of came back, I was just so I dived deep into it. You know, it was COVID as well, so everybody kind of had a little bit more time. Everybody was cooped up and nobody had much to do. So it was kind of like perfect timing too. And so again, you know, one of my kind of goals was to just kind of do a little bit of everything, right? And especially when you're new into some specific hobby, you just kind of want to do it all, right? So I'd met Dan Hickman at Chuck's shop one time, and you know he's a boot maker. And before that, I hadn't really considered Western boots at all. Like I knew of them. Um, I knew that there were some boot makers in Oklahoma. Famously, Lisa Sorrell is in Guthrie,
Ah,
and like, but I didn't really know much about that world. You know, my only experience is cowboy boots, kind of as a work boot, right? And then so you know, I just ended up connecting with Dan. Ended up making a pair of cowboy boots with him, and it like realized, oh, this is not just work boots. This is art. You know, it's beautiful. There's so much creativity.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of how I like started making essentially. And then whenever Christine reached out to me, it was kind of it was another interesting thing because I was also going to grad school at the time too, so I had a lot on my plate, and I was like, nah, I don't have the time. You know, I'm not really
You
interested. But then
refused at
like,
first.
yeah, but you know, when there's an idea that gets kind of like planted, you know, it takes a little bit of time to grow, and you're like, man, this would be really cool, you know, like, and you know, what's the worst that could happen? So she kind of like prompted it, and then that's kind of like what led into creating the brand, basically. So
right,
Yeah, I
right.
took a trip out to Oklahoma and we kind of like put our brains together over some barbecue um and hatched the idea.
Terrific.
yeah.
So pick up the story, Christine. So, and having discussed it, what did you do to start off the brand?
Well, I had sort of had some ideas about what I wanted to do in the first place. Honestly, there were a few boots that we had made at Stefano Bemmer that I just like absolutely adored. One that was made of bison that I just thought was so beautiful, and a few others. I think that was also I think it was also a side zip. But the leather that I loved the most was kudu. That was always like my just
Oh,
favorite leather. I loved like working with it. I loved how it aged over time. There were so many beautiful colors, and they always looked a little bit different from each other because they're taken from the antelope who's wild, and so any like scrapes and striations that
scratched
it
out.
has, yeah. And I love that kind of asymmetry. Um, so I had sort of had that idea already in my mind, and I think the we were thinking about the American market, like what people
Mm,
might like. And Stefano Bemmer generally is a little bit exaggerated in the European style direction, so
right.
I don't want to say flamboyant exactly, but just something that you don't see a lot of Americans wearing, like highly polished, Oxfords and all that kind of stuff is just not as common. So we wanted to keep sort of that idea of having this really elegant, sleek, and beautiful shape, but thinking that the leather could kind of provide that rugged durability that
Sure.
the American market kind of really likes. And that's what sort of unintentionally actually created this cowboy boot look. And I don't think either of us really necessarily had it in mind at first, but after we started making them, people were like, "Oh, this is kind of like a cowboy boot. It's like cowboy boot light, and we actually loved that idea because it sort of was exactly what we were going for in a roundabout way.
Right.
Mm.
Was that the zipper boot that you're talking about that you first made?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's,
I
if I may
so
actually
I
pick
mean
that up.
I reached out to
Oh,
Mikhail and I said, was this on a cowboy boot last? Because I mean that's a very cowboy pointy toe, a round toe
mhm,
cowboy boot, and that's a very cowboy boot look, I think, in
mhm.
that. But I mean, it's also quite European, isn't it? I mean, it's that sleek sort of European look. So,
Yeah.
how did you start designing? Is one of you a designer and one of you a maker, or how do you sort of divide up your responsibilities?
So it's
I
a
do
little
a
bit of both.
couple. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, do you want to or yeah, go ahead, and then I'll kind of add some
I was
context.
just gonna say because Mikhail is really the person who can put them all together. I made a couple of sketches like on paper and a couple of sketches, some terrible sketches like on the notes app, that kind of thing, like for the ideas that I had. But because as I mentioned, I sort of had an idea in my head of what it was, but I think and Mikhail and I actually have a lot of the same sort of stylistic taste and ideas, as far as like leathers and colors and things like that. So if I'm not mistaken, that's we kind of started with that one. I think I had like drawn a picture. I'd shown you some pictures that I was like thinking about that I really like.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm thinking about we were like at that cafe in
So
Oklahoma across from a violin shop, which was so interesting because a very close friend of mine has a violin shop here as well. But anyway, you can take on from the story there. That was my memory
yeah,
of the first sort of
so
iteration.
actually I do remember this very well, because the sketches you had, they were originally a lace up boot, and we
Oh
had,
yeah.
yeah, and so we designed a couple patterns and everything like that, but kind of roughly in
Right.
that same time period. So I had a kind of one of my first actual like commissions from, a complete stranger wanted a pair of boots for me, which was very cool at the time. It's still cool, but it was a guy from Reddit, and he wanted a pair of side zip boots, and I have not. I'd never made a pattern like that. It was kind of it was it was I didn't want to
Oh
just
no, I
jump into
remember.
like a
Yeah.
commission without having done anything with that. So I made a pair for myself, and it was in the kudu.
The red
Yeah,
ones.
and they were just, and that was
Oh.
around the time Christine was here, and they were like, or rather, that was right after Christine was here. And we just, because we had originally drafted this other stuff, and then
Mhm.
we both looked at the side zip, and we're like, this is it. Like, this is exactly it. And so I ended up making the other pair for him, and in the it was like a red horsehide. It was very cool. I
Yeah,
still
they were
think it's
so
very cool.
beautiful. Yeah.
But and so that was a thing, and like he also said, this is interesting because this kind of goes back to this whole cowboy thing discussion, but like he also said it was basically like in his mind it was like kind of a modernized cowboy look, but it is interesting because it does have the shape, but like it was not exactly intentional, because the last it's literally just a like a dress shoe last
Right.
Yeah.
that I really liked, that I picked out at a last factory in Florence. But this is the other thing that I love about like shoemaking, is that you can take like a shape, and you, depending on what you like choose in the design, whether it's the pattern, whether it's the leather, whether it's the sole, whatever, and you could completely transform the look. And the same shape can be like a rugged boot. It could be like, you put, I've used the same last, and I've done it on like French calf and like leather sole, put a bunch of broguing on it, and it's just a beautiful dress shoe. And then
Mm,
you put this on with some like bison or kudu or whatever, and it's like a nice rugged
mm,
boot. So
mm,
it's such a like a great like avenue
mm,
for like creativity, because then tweak this, and you're like, oh wow, that looks incredible, and you change
Mhm.
this, and like maybe I'm not as huge a fan of that. And so this is kind of back to kind of the design slash making side of it with Christine and I. Like, when she was in Georgia last, we were designing a boot for a friend of mine, and it's
Yeah.
like, you're just picking up hides, checking them, you know what I mean, like brainstorming, and that's such a fun like collaborative thing, because a lot of times like I'm trying to make something, and I might not even think of doing X or Y or Z, but like when it's collaborative, it's a lot more interesting. It's in that same vein too. When I do custom orders, like I don't take them that often, because I just don't have the time to just do that. But it's super collaborative. Like I'm actually working on a pair for a guy that I'd made a couple pairs for before, and we're just brainstorming, and like he's uh we decided on making like a pair of kudu long wings, and then we decided to use like hippo accent because I have some hippo hide, and it's just I wouldn't have. We were kind of talking about it. I had showed him another pair of boots that I made. Which is like, what if we did that? I was like, and it's interesting because it's like once the light bulb goes off and you get fired up and like, and I'm excited about this project, because this is a cool idea, you know what I mean? And I wouldn't have thought about it. So I love that
Yeah.
collaborative aspect of it, both
And then there's
with
so many
Christine and
ideas
I
you
when
don't know
we're
where to
designing
stop.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Do you
cool.
two find it hard to collaborate so far apart?
Well,
It's
technology
definitely
makes
better
it
when we're
easy,
together.
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
We try to link up, when we can. It's definitely better together. Also, Mikhail has like a lot of leather at home. Also, like all the things you might need. He's like has his own little, house
yeah.
workshop with everything. So
I
we can kind of see and look at like even the eyelets and the laces, and we can sort of layer everything together. I still have like friends in the leather and shoe world here, so it's like from time to time I can even put some leathers together to see how they look, laid together. And I can even send, Mikhail those ideas. And it can be a little challenging when we're sending each other videos and things like that because the lighting is not always like, getting the color exactly how you see it. But we managed to make it work.
I
yeah,
mean, it seems to me you found, um, I'll call it a design aesthetic. Looking at your Instagram and the boots
Mm,
that you have in your website, it's a kind of rugged elegance. Like they're elegant boots, but they have quirks about them that make them rugged. Whether I mean, there's a dress boot shape in kudu, and then Mikhail, you're saying about adding on bison and things, and there are boots that have like 3 different types of leather that just it's an elegant look, but a rugged feel. Is that the sort of thing you were aiming for?
um, yeah. One of the things that like for me, well, so back to that whole thing about leather. I feel like to some degree I've converted my obsession with collecting shoes to collecting leather so that I can make shoes.
mhm.
So, but once you have them, like I like, I guess there's. Let me gather my thoughts. So, I'm a great storyteller. I don't know if you know this, but uh, no, if you step back, there's like when you look at like the shoe space right now, right? Like most of the kind of the big known brands, at least American side, not necessarily the European, because that's kind of a bit of a different aesthetic, different market. And you kind of have a very similar look across the board. People differentiate themselves in certain ways, but it's kind of a similar look, similar aesthetic. And what I wanted to do is, well, both Christine and I, from the get go, we didn't want to do just that, right? Like, there's only so many like service boot things you could do, or like like the Pacific Northwest boots, like Whites and West Coast and everything like that. They have kind of this rugged look, but it's it has the very round toe. It's got like the big thick heels and very thick like rugged leathers, and it's very cool. It's a look, right? But we wanted to kind of go away from that a little bit,
Mm,
because there's a lot of options there, right?
mm,
But the flip side, with the Europeans, it's like very very almost too formal, right? So
mm,
we're kind
Yeah.
of treading that space. So when it comes to kind of more of a design thing, like I like the big thick leathers, right? Like I like
mm.
um the bisons and the kudus and the horse hides. I have a lot of horse hide. I love that leather too. Um, but at the same time, like our roots are in like dress shoes, right? Like
Yeah.
all the first pairs that I made, all what I learned was basically like just dress shoes, right? So I've
Yeah.
kind of taken the dress shoes, added the stuff, but then too, I like the more I've kind of worked with it, the more I kind of like just playing with colors and textures and
Yeah.
everything like that. And
Mm,
there's only so much like you can do in a shoe. On a pair of cowboy boots, you can make crazy inlays and stitching designs and everything like that. But on a shoe, you're kind of a little bit more limited in terms of the pattern. So I end up basically
yeah.
working with different textures and leathers. One of the just one of my favorite projects that I did recently was like a pair of tanker boots in like black horsehide,
Yeah, I
and
saw that on Instagram. Yeah.
just it and that, again, that was actually that was a guy that we had met at the boot camp, Stitch Down boot camp event in New York, and he had reached out to me about making a pair of like tanker boots, and I mentioned earlier, one of my kind of goals with shoemaking is to make one of every style, and I was like, yeah, I don't. I don't know. It's a challenge, but and then too, it was also a collaborative thing with him too, and you just have like bunch of leathers and you start brainstorming, and like to me it was like you're working with black's not because he wanted black specifically. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's boring, but it's a little one dimensional. So how do you change that? Well, you add some shades, you add some textures and everything like that, and then everything just, and then how you click a hide will also affect the look, because I used the Miriam, like the reverse horse butt. So it's like a shrunk and tumbled. So the transition between the shell cordovan and the rest of the hide, it has like this puckering effect, which is
the
just really
honeycomb.
cool texture. Yeah. And so I placed that in areas where it would kind of like interact with the texture of like the shark, or
Right.
so it's just, I guess what I'm, all that to say is, for lack of other creative options, I'm working with textures and colors,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
So I'm not sure if you guys have discussed this amongst each other, but I'll ask you, Christine. Do you see like a kind of roadway for Arno, as in, describing your brand? Like if you talked about Pacific Northwest, chunky work boots, never die. What's the sort of Arno brand with what Mikhail's talked about?
As far as like what we see making down the road, or like who we are now, or
I think where you think you're going. I'd be
where
interested
I
in
think we're
that.
going. I think that you know, Mikhail obviously like he makes a lot of one-offs for people. So he'll do custom orders, and I think that they still reflect sort of um our style in general, because it derives from both of our brains.
Yeah.
And so, but I do think that we love boots. Um and I think, going off what Mikhail said, honestly, he was saying that it's restricted. I sort of, when I started working with shoes, I never realized that you could have so many different pieces together. I didn't know before, because I knew nothing about shoes before I was working. So I discovered that like the cap toe could be a different leather from like the side piece and all these things, and even the tongue. And so for me, I'm like, oh, actually, there's this world of possibilities. And you say that if black is maybe like a boring, if not, maybe it's also a little bit edgy, but there's so many different ways you can use black, so whether it's in like a kudu that will have some pull up, or whether it's in a horsehide that has that, those contrasting um sort of like look there, or if it's like a pebbled leather, or something like that, and how you can combine them. I think that we will always have that little flair, let's say,
A
even if it's like
quirk.
it's all black with the yeah, a quirk
Yeah.
or a flair, because I think that represents both what Mikhail and I are interested in. I think that when it comes to the individual pairs and what Mikhail makes for himself, he can obviously be a little bit even more creative, because Mikhail loves to experiment with everything. I think maybe when I come into the picture and we're trying to make it a little bit more sellable, let's say, like
She brings it
maybe we take
down
off
to earth a little.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just tone it down like a little bit, just to make it, a bit more accessible. But I think in general, as far, these are some of the themes we've already hit on, but I think that for anybody who loves a work boot, because so many people do love that work boot look, this is sort of just like a little step up into something that you could also wear like to a nice restaurant, or like, or to Sunday lunch or something like that, that can give you a little bit more style without it feeling like you're wearing a costume. Because I know, even for me living in Florence, it's like people dress up, like they can get very
Yeah.
elegant. And I know sometimes, like when I've tried to do that, it starts to feel a little bit like I'm wearing a costume, and I don't
Right.
necessarily relate to that. So I have to find the ways to sort of tone it down in a way that makes sense for me, while still keeping keeping a bit of that elegance. And I think that our brand, you know, resolves that gap sort of. It's like somewhere in the middle where you can still feel like you have something cool and different
Right.
that looks really nice, and it's not a work boot, and it's not like this, you know, crazy elegant shoe that you feel sort of uncomfortable in.
So if I can
I'm
make a
not sure if that
joke,
answers your question, but
I think you have. I mean, it is that
okay.
design aesthetic with a quirk. But one of the things I when Mikhail contacted me and I had a look at the website, I was a little scared by the variety of what you do. And it's like, look, I'm expecting a website with um, 3 models in different
yeah.
layers. And oh my God, what's he doing? It can be a little bit scary what you do. And I guess that's what you're saying, Christine, is that you try and get that into a commercial kind of model. You know?
Yeah, so actually with the zip up, we started with just 3 options. So it was only the zip up, and we had the kudu, the reverse kudu, and the
Bison.
like sort of purple bison.
Right.
And so we thought that would be because maybe just like the colors and the texture were maybe a little bit new for new shoe wearers. That could be enough to sort of give it that edge that we were looking for.
Yeah.
And since then, I think with the zip up, we've done it now in also the the Loden suede,
Sweet.
which
Yep.
is sort of like that green gray color, which is still like you know, easy to wear, but it's beautiful, and the color is a little bit you know, more interesting in my opinion. And so we have that for like sort of the, I don't want to say run of the mill, because I still think they're really special. They're not out there, let's
Yeah.
say. They're not
Yeah.
super experimental,
Yeah.
the way
So
that some of
I,
the other pairs are.
and then
Yeah.
we have this,
Like this one.
you
Oh,
know,
Yes.
which is a recent thing.
right.
But
But we got a group
we
made to
still
order
have
going
something
on that
crazy.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did
But
you
we brought
make
that
that
one.
for someone?
So this was
No.
so two things. Uh, so this is actually a small group made to order that we did from a workshop, and this stemmed from the boot camp uh,
Right.
Yeah.
event. And so I had made a pair for myself a while ago. Actually, it was Chuck, my friend. He had a hide of like just like a scrap of hair on hide zebra that he gave me, and because I just like to cook things up, right? And I sat on it for a while, and then I had an idea. Whoa, what if I did it on the side panel, right? And then so I had it at the show, and a couple of people really liked it, and we ended up organizing kind of a small group made to order. But so we have something a little crazy too, but to kind of like another interesting thing about like kind of all this, kind of the balancing act between going a little crazy and keeping it, digestible for people and like wearable, right? Um, the flip side, I think it was Christine, you had mentioned at one point how like either one of your friends or somebody that had seen the site and were like, well, and then saw the zip boots and you're like, I thought these would be a little crazier because just based on the
Yeah.
other side. But so like I would I would like to do. I think something like the zebra, for example. It's not obviously something that would be everybody would wear or would want to wear or should wear, right? So I would love to be able to do more of like stuff that's a little bit more out there like that, but maybe in like a group made to order, where you have like 5 or 10 or whatever people that you that want something a little out there. Cool. I mean, I made a pair for myself. Well, from the workshop, we did like a sample of like is red kudu with black bison, on the panels, and it's a little, it's a little loud. It's a little loud, but I think it looks cool. And the flip side too is like I feel like a lot of people can probably wear something more out there than they
Yeah.
think they can.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are too
Yeah.
like to some degree they're too conservative in some of like what they think they can pull off. And
Mm.
one loud thing with an outfit just pulls it together, in my opinion.
That
So
it's really interesting. When you were talking, I was thinking, look, I love this. I mean, I wouldn't have myself thought I would buy a boot of that shape last designed in a kudu. I would have thought in a Chrome XL brown or a black or something like that.
Calf would be
So
great
you give
too.
me that zebra boot and I'd wear it. But if I were to approach you and say, I'd like a boot that I would not think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I'm wondering whether when people approach you, do you go, have you thought of this? Or
Uh,
how many people say, I'd like a brown boot, and you go, nah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, actually, this is a good topic to touch on because, um, yeah, I do, especially for because I whenever I started making it, it was all friends and family. I wasn't trying to like make and sell boots. It was more as a hobby, right? And so someone like my brother especially is like, yeah, I kind of want like a brown boot. I was like, nah, man, if I'm gonna make it for you, it's gonna be something a little wild, you know. So like I made it for him in a pair in green horsehide, and he loves them, right? And it is a lot more wearable than you would think. Like green is a very versatile color,
Yeah,
but people think, "Whoa, green boots! Whoa, that's too much." But like, man, jeans, khakis,
yeah,
whatever, like it works.
yeah,
So one of my favorite things. So whenever I take a custom order, there's like kind of two avenues. If somebody knows exactly what they want, cool. I will like try to like add a little bit more flair to it. I'll like I'll brainstorm with them maybe because at the end of the day, I do this for fun. So like I want to make things that I think are beautiful and interesting and exciting, right? But the
And challenging for
projects
you,
that
I
I
think.
like the most are somebody's like, hey man, make me something cool, and so then I get a little bit more a little while, but it's of course I it's a feedback process, right? Like I'm like, hey, how about what if we did this? This would be too crazy, And so it's not just I make them something just completely wild and here wear it, right? Like so it's within reason, but I do, and I think this is part of what kind of ties back in with your with your comment about not thinking of making like a zebra or even buying or even that it's an option. I think part of the strength of Christina and I's kind of small brand is that like I'm experimenting with a lot of things. We're brainstorming on a lot of things, and like I can just mock something up or put something together, and like so it's a lot easier than sending it off to a workshop, sourcing
Yeah.
this, making a pattern, waiting, and things take way longer than you would expect to get done, just way
Yeah.
longer. And
mm,
whereas here, I can put something together like idea, reality. Whoa, this looks great, or yeah,
mm.
wasn't as good. Let's go back to the drawing board. So I think it's one
I
of the
I think
strengths of
also
this dynamic.
yeah, also I think just like our knowledge, because like when I was working at Stefano Bemmer, like we had a huge stockpile of leathers, and one of my jobs was also to put together, they call them like mezzette now, like the things where you look through what each color is, the
Yeah,
like the color
Watch
wheel, I
books.
guess,
like a
kind of thing.
sample book or something.
Yes, exactly, like the
Yeah,
sample books of the leathers. And so one of my jobs was to basically, like, make a bunch of those, so I would have to, like, press the machine to, like, make all the leather, so in that time, I got to see, like, every color of every leather, and, one of my favorite leathers also is the museum calf, which is kind of like a
Ooh, yeah,
cloudy color, and so that can be even just, like, I don't know, brown, and but it's still
yeah,
just because it has a little bit of movement, it just makes it like that a little bit extra special.
yeah,
But it's still a neutral and it's still easy to wear. And that's kind of, I think, how we feel about the animal prints too, is that animal prints really are kind of a neutral. And
right.
if you're wearing a boot, as Mikhail said, it's like if you don't want it to show, you can keep your jeans or your pants rolled
Yeah,
down.
yeah,
If you want it to show a little bit like more flair, you can show more of the side panel of if there's kind of like a crazy side panel, you can show it. It's not as loud as people might think it is when you're seeing it like on its own, um, on a shelf, as it is when you
yeah,
actually put it on.
yeah.
yeah.
So, your construction. I understand some of your boots are made in Mexico, but some you make yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So the ones that are made in Mexico, it's basically like it's not Goodyear welt, but it's so basically they take the insole and they cut like an angled like cut
Yeah.
in the side.
Yeah.
So
Hand
then, and
welted.
then you,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's, well, it's not exactly hand welted, because hand welted, you have to, like, you cut like a double channel, and you have
Right.
like it's a hold fast there. So
Yeah.
this, it's Viberg does a similar construction with their Goodyear welted shoes, where you take like a big thick piece of leather, you cut into it, and it pulls it up, and then you can
Yeah.
stitch the welt to it.
Yeah.
So it's similar to Goodyear welt, but the Goodyear welted, you have like that rib that you glue.
Yeah.
The key difference is, it's still kind of, the key difference basically is you can't like, you can't cheap out on the insole. You have to have a thick insole to do this.
Right.
And everything else, like the workshop we work with, it, we've just been really fortunate in that we found somebody that like that can do small batches for us, and they actually like incorporate a lot of the feedback. So
Right.
and this is again one of the kind of the strengths of having the shoemaking background. So like, we get the samples. One of the things on some of the samples, they had put like it there's little details that affect the look, that from the construction. So one is where you put that hold fast, right? Like if you put it a little bit more under the insole, like if you cut it more in, the shape kind of has a more like, you could almost see underneath the shoe,
Right.
like the welt comes out from
Right. It goes
underneath instead of
in.
out
Yeah.
from the side. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even little things like that, like I had we had done a couple samples, I did some feedback, and we adjusted that. So you kind of have more of that. Like it also shows more of the curves of the last. It's such a small thing, but so that's the construction that we use at the workshop. But whenever I do stuff at home, it's almost everything's basically hand welted. I cut the channel,
Right.
welt. I've done like Norwegian construction. I've done stitch down, but mostly I prefer, in my opinion, hand welted is the best. People like different looks. Different looks suit for different,
Right.
yeah, preferences. But Goodyear welted is kind of the gold standard in my opinion, for the simple fact of, if you screw up, a resole on a stitch down on Norwegian, you've kind of screwed up the shoe. But
Sure.
if you screw up a resole on the welted shoe, you just change the welt and
Change the welt. Yeah.
you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like as long as the upper's
So,
good, it'll
are there
last forever.
models you send to Mexico and other models you make, or is it how
Um,
what's the split?
so the split is basically all the one-offs on the site. Those I make.
Right.
So all the wonky stuff, all the like kind of wild stuff, that all I make. The We have two models that are made in the workshop. It's the Bliskavka boot, which is a side zip. So I've made some myself. Almost all of those are from the shop, and then
Right.
the other one is, we hadn't really talked about it much, but it's the Vishivanka boot, which is
Yeah.
it's the one with the embroidery.
Oh
So
yeah,
that
love
one,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So that one's also made in the workshop. I'd like to do more of that, just because to me, I
So
mean,
Mikhail made the original one.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I've made other ones just as like samples. So that's,
Right.
but that, like the ready to wear stuff, basically anything available at the shop, like the web shop, that's all made from the
Right.
workshop. So all
Right.
the other stuff, that's like, case by case
Yeah.
design, whatever, make one off. Some of them are on the web shop, just one offs that I'd made that
Yeah,
Right.
for
yeah.
whatever reason.
In the
So
website, they're like one of a kind, and then the
Right.
rest are made in the workshop.
Right.
yeah.
So let's talk about the Vishivanka, and I'll put a picture of it. I'll edit and put a picture of it up here. I really find that very attractive because my favorite boot, I think, is a service boot style, but a service boot is a service boot. You kind
Yeah.
of can't get away from it. And then to add that little bit of embroidery is that quirk that I was talking about, which is, it just makes it very different. You probably don't
Mhm.
see it most of the time anyway, because it's high up
No,
in the
no, no.
shop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's exactly it. If you want to show off and you cuff your jeans, wow, it's there, but it's not very visible. So this actually, I'll just kind of go off on this one just for a little bit. This actually kind of ties back in a little bit with our cowboy boot conversation earlier, right? So this exact style came about because of me making cowboy boots. I would never have thought to put an inlay on a like a derby boot. I wouldn't have thought of putting an inlay just in general, right? But
Mm.
because I was making the cowboy boots, because there's so much of that like cutouts and inlays and designs, that's kind of the genesis of that. And kind of a quick background. My family's Ukrainian. I was born there, but I'm in the Air Force as well. I'm a reservist. And in 2022, whenever the war kicked off in Ukraine, I got pulled in as an interpreter to. Well, I was in Germany. I was, but so that kind of like, so I was kind of a lot more plugged in with everything that's going on there geopolitically. And it also kind of like, if it reconnected me to my roots, I guess.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I had but these embroidery, it's a very like traditional. They make these beautiful shirts, like collars, and then down here, and on the sleeves and everything like that. It's just this
Right.
beautiful embroidery. So I was like, wow, what if I put that on, like a boot or something, and then just one of my aunts does it, and that I made the original thing, the original piece, and then for the original pair of boots with that. And then one of my friends, his godmother still lives in Ukraine. She does this, for a living. She does this embroidery, and she's never done anything on boots before. But she's like, I'm willing to try. And so we got several designs. Those are more like the actual designs that we use. Those are all just out of her head. I was like, just make me something cool, because I like when somebody asks for a pair of boots and they're like, make me something cool. So in turn, I was like, just make it beautiful, and I'll figure out how to use it. So that's that style pretty much in a nutshell.
So it's embroidered on tape that then stitched to the boot.
No, so it's on like a canvas.
Okay.
It's stitched. So all of them are hand stitched,
Yeah.
and then I put some like fusible fabric on the back of it just to give it
Okay.
some
Right.
rigidity. And then it's an insert, so like it's stitched into the upper,
Okay.
and then the lining's on the other side. So
Okay.
it's in there. And I've been wearing my pair for like 8 months or 6 months, something like that. So one of my thoughts was, I was a little concerned about like, crocking for jeans or
Sure.
longevity, but I've been wearing mine, and it's it's kicking.
Yeah.
There's no,
Yeah.
it's very durable.
I guess
So
it's protected a bit by the insetting, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. Well,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, yeah, well, one, I mean, it's durable, right? Like these are all like, it's stitched. It's I guess I don't know how to say it exactly, but it's a bunch of different threads, right? But
Sure.
it's all hand stitched. It's
Yeah.
in there. It's not just like,
It's like locked
machine
in,
where
yeah.
there's loose threads or
Sure.
anything like
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
And then it's all basically, one, it's glued to the lining on the back end, and then it's all stitched in there as well. So
Okay.
I don't know, it's cool. It adds a little color. It's kind of like cowboy boots. You could tuck your boots in and show off, or you could just keep it
Yeah.
covered, and
Yeah.
and you're just wearing normal boots. Nobody sees, the flare.
So
So
how many
Yeah, and
lasts
as
are
you said,
you?
it's protected in the inlay.
Go on, Christine. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, and as you said, it's like protected in the inlay because it's not sticking out
Yeah.
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So how many different lasts are you guys using?
Um. So
And
for
where do you
for
get
for
them from?
Yeah, so our original, so the ready to wear stuff right now, we're just using the one last, that's that kind of like that cowboy-ish
Yeah.
dress shoe-ish last.
Yeah.
So that was originally, I got it from Formifico Romagnolo or something. I don't remember the exact,
A last maker.
but it's a
The
last
formificio,
manufacturer in Florence.
Right.
the formificio,
Yeah,
yeah.
Right.
and then when we were in Lyon, we had picked out a couple other lasts. So I have, this is more for like what we'd like to do maybe in the future. I have kind of more of a rounded, more American style kind of service boot last, because some styles just work better with that.
Right.
I
Right.
also have another last. I don't have a full set of like kind of slipper loafers. It's,
Right.
low heel. I've only made a couple pairs on that. That's ambitious, five-year plan, maybe. But for now, for the ready to wear stuff, we have one last, and for like more of the custom stuff, I have, more of a rounded service boot last, more of the dress last,
An attic
and
curve
then
last.
loafer, yeah, slippers. So
And do you think you will one day design your own lasts?
Ooh. So we've tweaked this one a little bit, but as far as from scratch, I think I would like to at some point get with an actual like last maker, that carves it out of a block of wood. That would be very cool.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, or even better, if I found the time, figure out how to do it myself.
Yeah.
But I think that one's a little ways away. So we're basically when I took this dress shoe last, we'd made little tweaks, adjustments to it to kind of fit more of,
Hmm.
so it fits the American foot better,
We
but
did that with the last maker.
in Lyon, yeah.
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 Yeah, so they
And it's
scanned it in
last
and they made
making.
adjustments for us.
It,
Yeah.
it can be
Yeah.
expensive, right?
It is,
Two.
especially because it's kind of iterative too, and then too, like if you already have a last set
Yeah.
and you make some tweaks and you make a whole new last set, and then
Yeah.
if now it starts adding up the cost too, and then if you we would like to at some point get into like different E widths, C
With,
widths, and
yeah.
that now you're adding more and more and more, and then the other thing too is like juggling how many pairs you're going to make and how many pairs in each size, and if you have a small run of like, I don't know, 20 or 30 pairs, which is kind of where we've been going with, because we're starting out now. If you start adding like different widths and stuff like that, now that just scales your cost,
And
and then
halves,
two,
and yeah.
yeah,
Even
it's tough.
even the storage, it's like it's not like we have the workshop in Mexico. It's not like, some big factory. It's a little workshop. So it's like even the fact that they have to find a place to put all of that
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah, yeah.
is something to consider.
It's a fine line because when I review new and small bootmakers, often the comment is, like them, but they don't have half sizes, or they don't have
Yeah.
wider widths. And people don't realize how much a last costs,
Hmm.
and then having a set of lasts in different sizes costs.
Hmm.
So it's that fine line as a bootmaker of predicting the right sizes, perhaps, that you sort of focus on.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
and
It's also a
the
challenge.
and the other thing too is trying to figure out like what sizes you're going to make if you're making like ready to wear, for example. If you're making made to
Hmm.
order, great,
Yeah.
anything goes, right? But if you're making ready to wear order, and say for example, like we've done runs of like as little as 15 pairs, and if you're trying to figure out like what sizes to go with, and so it's a surprising amount. Like I guess I'm a little taller, and in my head, you know 10 and a half, 11, that's a good normal size, and that's where I was sticking around. But apparently we've been
Mhm.
selling a lot in like, you know 8.5, 9. And so I had misjudged too. Like I think we were a little more top heavy on the larger sizes,
Right.
Yeah.
and so
Yeah, we've
it's
had a lot of requests for
learning
smaller
process.
sizes, and we didn't make them because, we'd been advised to sort of stay within the median, because it's
Yeah.
just more likely that you're gonna be able to
Yeah.
sell those ones. So it's a learning process, and it's like
Mhm.
whenever something doesn't fit someone or we don't have the size, like it's such a huge disappointment to me because I want to be able to share it with, as many people as possible. But you're exactly right about the fact that it's a matter of like logistics and costs and all that stuff to be able to make so many multiple different lasts that can fit everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah. And I guess the bell curve of the median shifts depending on whether you're talking Europe or the US as a market.
it does, yeah.
Yeah.
So even
Europe,
just
US, Asia,
talking,
yeah.
yeah, even just talking with like the last manufacturer, in Mexico, in Leon, and in Italy, they like even how they make it, you know they their shape is a little different, and like their sizing, the way they do it is a little different because
Hmm.
it's for, primarily for that market, North
Yeah.
America versus
Yeah.
Europe. And I guess there's enough small differences that they take all that into account. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting. If I had the money, I'd make everything, but you also
Yeah,
have at the same
and the
time have
space.
to kind of juggle that. So
One
Yeah.
of the things that I learned at Stefano Bemmer, like, for example, because they had, I think, like, maybe 4 or 5 different lasts, but even still, if we had something that was ready to wear and somebody really wanted it, one of the things that kept me the busiest was making these, like, custom insoles, basically. So whether it's, like, putting a little bit of padding in the toe so that it pulls the foot back, or, even if it's, like, stretching out the sides a little bit, or even, like, bending the whole shoe, which is something I also didn't know that you could do until I was working there, or even softening the leather with, like, a hair blow dryer. They have
Right.
all of these tips, like, and tricks, tips and tricks for how you can make the shoe work for you. So I had never kind of known that that was a possibility before working there. And I think a lot of people, I have sort of suggested that to some people who have purchased things from us, and sometimes they get it, but sometimes they don't, because I think a lot of people feel like, "Oh, I should just fit into the shoe that is my
Yeah.
size." But actually, all of our feet are incredibly different from each other's, and so you'd have to have, like, a whole rainbow of lasts to actually really be able to fit each and every
Yeah.
person who came through your door. So I loved knowing about, even for me, I have a pair of boots from Stefano Bemmer. They were made on a ladies last, but they are a bit bigger than my size, because the shape that I wanted that they had. So I have, like, an insert that has a little bit of padding in the toe to
Right.
just push my foot back up a little bit,
Right.
and they're
Right.
super comfortable in it, and I still love them.
Right.
Um, it sounds like something that, like, oh, we're just gonna tweak it and try to make it work, but it is actually how shoemakers do it
Yeah.
for people. They make
You,
these
you
custom insoles.
you'd think that in the era of scanning and 3D printing, you could start to make lasts, more fitting and cheaper.
Yeah.
You should be able to, but it's not where I don't think we're there yet. Maybe in a utopia in the future.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it could also impact the pattern as well at a certain point, I think,
Yeah.
Ah,
depending on the size.
The
And then
other
you
yeah,
have to change all the pattern scaling. And so then
yeah, the other hard
there's a whole other thing.
yeah,
mm,
yeah.
the
I
other
had,
difficulty,
yeah, sorry, go on.
just to finish that, with it being like a side zip without laces, laces add they cover a lot of sins.
Of
If it
wiggle
doesn't quite
room.
It
fit,
can be close, open.
easy, but you kind of have to have a good fit,
Yeah,
with the side
yeah.
zip. So
I
yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
say, and I told you this, Mikhail, I struggled to get into this early on
Hmm.
because it's such a
Yeah.
snug, form-fitting boot that until the kudu sort of softened, it was a bit
Hmm.
of a struggle getting in. But once
Yeah.
Yeah.
once it's now broken in, the curve is just snug and it's like a sock.
It so that's the other kind of juggle with this, right? Because so I had made a couple iterations of this. The flip side is if you make it a little too wide, then you get heel slip,
Mm,
and so we landed on, I think, a good spot. It's a little tough at first, but we're not using like super, like, we're using more stretchy,
yeah,
pliable leather,
yeah.
to
Mhm.
kind of to account for that, because we had run a sample at one point, and it was just this, like, just I don't remember, it wasn't any like name brand leather, but it was just very dense, and it didn't have a lot of give,
Yeah,
and that was one of the difficulties with it. Like
yeah,
the opening didn't really open up, and it wasn't
yeah,
comfortable. So that
Yeah.
it's a balance, and
yeah. But I think
you try to.
when it does fit, it's a sleek boot, right? It's not a
Mhm.
logger boot. So in that sense, it's sexier because it's a
Yeah,
very slim fit.
right, yeah,
Um,
kind of
so
a
I
little
think
bit
It
of
that
a
yeah.
rock star.
it works. It works. It's just
Yeah.
initially when I first got it out of the box, I went, oh no, wrong size, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. We've had a few people with the same feedback, that it was a bit of a struggle to get it on, and then once they did, they were happy with
it
it. So
opens up. Yeah.
we were very
Yeah,
happy to, like, overcome that hurdle with some people who were willing to trust that it was gonna work out. I sent a bunch of people some nice shoehorns to sort of, like, help them get
It
into it.
helps.
Yeah.
yeah,
It
Yeah.
does help. Yeah.
yeah. But you do need a long shoehorn.
Mhm.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I sent them long ones so they could
yeah,
stand
yeah,
and do
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, talking in terms of the future, where do you want to see the brand grow? How big do you see the brand grow?
Do
It's
you
hard to
want to take
say,
this one, Christine?
Yeah, sure. I think, how big do we want it to grow? it continues to be this challenge of, I think quality and authenticity and like what we really want to do. I mean, it's like we didn't really start the brand to become, like the next Steve Madden or something because I can't say either of us were in it like for the money. I mean, it would be wonderful if it could like, blow up and be like that. But when it's sort of, I think we've both sort of approached it from like an artistic endeavor. Because I think for both of us, it's we both have other full-time jobs, so it's really a creative outlet, and if we can manage to grow, it kind of even with this sort of level of quality that we want to keep and maintain,
Mm.
and it would be amazing. I think we'd be really happy about that, but we don't want to compromise. I don't think that we want to compromise, at least not in
No.
this
Yeah.
stage, and I don't think ever on first of all the quality, which is the most important thing, and just the ability to design. So I think that we were really excited about the idea of the group made to orders, because in this case we can kind of like get our sort of our costs covered, some of the costs covered up front, but we can still be creative and work with people and collaborate on an idea that is really loved, and that is a little bit different. Um, the way that operates is just a little bit different than a big brand. It's like because
Sure.
you lose that sort of
Yeah.
connection, I guess, to both like the work, the art, and like
Yeah.
the
And the people that
relationship to
wear
the
it.
person who's wearing it and the
Yeah.
people who are wearing it, exactly. And I think that shoes are such an interesting thing because like you can create this really beautiful sort of piece of work, but you can also wear it and you use it and you love it.
Yeah.
And I mean, the feedback that we get from the people who love their boots is like, and I remember this feeling too when I worked at Steph November. They're just like so happy because it's comfortable and they feel good, and like
Mm.
they know that it's a quality piece of work. They know they got some really nice leather, and it's just a really good feeling.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I've got a two-part question coming from that. So do you firstly see yourselves ever becoming full-time, in Arno? And then secondly, in doing so, would you get to a point where you've got um, maybe 3 models that are constantly pumped out, just in time, whatever, made to order, but pumped out in those 3 models, and then you do your artistic endeavors into one-offs? Would you
Mhm.
see yourself in that situation?
So I think for me, I would love that, but it's also juggle too because so basically yes, I mean in short, who wouldn't want to succeed in what they're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that the
If
kind
I
of the
Sorry,
things
let me
that
interrupt. I think
go
there's a
ahead.
different success, right? There's a success like I just described, but there's
Uh,
also a success that I'm hearing from Christine where the artistic quality is the important one, and you're artists rather than
mhm.
cordwainers. Do you see what I mean? That's also
Yeah.
successful, right?
Well, so I
I
was
think
actually
so.
go ahead, Christine. Sorry. Oh,
No, go ahead, Mikhail. I'll chime in
so,
after.
yeah. So one of the things that for me, one of the things that actually, the things that I love the most about having a small brand is that like I have a lot of ideas in my head and I have a finite amount of time to like make it, right? And so one of the things that's been super cool is like I have an idea, I get the leather together, we brainstorm or whatever, we get it to Leon, and then I get it. Somebody else made it. I'm like, whoa, this is so super cool. And I didn't spend like an ungodly amount just to see if my idea is going to be good, of
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
yeah, so there's definitely success, from that point of view of like, even if this continues to be like just a small like brand that we just kind of get to like creatively express ourselves, that would still very much be a success in my mind because we're still plugged in, we're still like into our interests, right? Like we're still able to express all that. And then too, like I could get a lot of these ideas out, into reality without having to make it all myself. That's also
Yeah.
success. The other metric of success is like, so when we went to the boot camp event, it was awesome. Like in the sense of like, you're with your people, you know what I mean, and everybody's
Yeah.
passionate about a
Yeah.
project that you're or about something that you're passionate about. Heck, even
Yeah.
just talking to you right now, this is kind of success too, because it's like,
Yeah.
you have your day job and you have your cubicle, and that's cool. Like you have to pay the bills, right? Like I wouldn't be able to do this if I didn't have a stable day job, right? But
Mhm.
like going in there and talking to everybody and being in this world and like exchanging ideas and all that type of stuff. Even if all this is it stays as like a small side project, that would still be success. When we started this brand, we kind of had like the idea that like even if this is even if we lose money on it, like in the long term, if we break even or lose money, it's still worth doing. Just the process
Yeah, we
of
really
doing it
wanted to
is
try.
still worth it. Yeah. So
Mm. Mm.
Yeah,
Christine,
and
what
I
do you
think
think?
too, the other thing is that, if we did it full time, we'd have to, pay ourselves a living wage. And
Sure.
I think that the other thing is people have to, we have to establish like more trust in our, like, customers and in the market. And, if they would allow us to slowly increase the pricing, then we could do it. But, if you're talking about growing in that sense, I think it would require the boots to be a bit more expensive. And I think at the price point that they are now, like for example, Stefano Bemmer does more or less like all the same exact type of work that we're doing, but they sell theirs for, I think 1,300 euros
Yeah.
at the starting rate. The ones that
Yeah.
are less than that are made in a different kind of
Yeah.
construction, that's like not a bad quality, but just not that same quality.
Yeah.
And so they're able to do it, and then they can make more, and then they can take more risks and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. So but Stefano Bemmer has a very like historic name and respect, and that people really know and
Yeah.
trust. So we haven't established that yet.
Yeah.
But if we can and we start to do that, then that could be an option for us as well.
So where to from here?
Hopefully.
ooh,
I
where
think
to
we're going
from
to
here?
explore more group made to orders. I think we have a couple of things in the pipeline also for ready to wear.
Have you
We
thought of
have we keep
Kickstarters?
making a woman's boot.
Kickstart.
Somebody else mentioned that to us, the Kickstarter, and we haven't explored that option yet. But I am open to it. Yeah, I'd have to understand more about it works. I never did one before, so.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think from a consumer's point of view, who really likes your style, I would love to see a boot like this, the Vishivanka, going into, I guess, an MTO model. You see it on the website. I'd like the green kudu, please. Put in an order. 4 weeks later, Leon produces it and sends it to me. I love that sort of
Yeah.
model. But I think I would slightly kind of miss the quirky one-offs that you're doing.
Yeah.
So
Uh, the other thing. So this is from a perspective of like originally I was just um, a collector, right? I love being able to design like a made to order whatever with the maker, pick out my choices, and I get the pair in 4 months or whatever. As somebody that's like working on the other end now with Christine and I kind of juggling, what people are trying to get made, juggling with the workshop deal. That I understand now why a lot of brands as they
Shipping
get
and
bigger
taxes and
they get rid of it. It and which isn't great, but it's just a like the logistics of it. One, like if this is actually sorry to tie back in my actual metric of success someday in the future. If I was ever to just do this full time and whatever, I would like full control of my own workshop. That would be my metric of success. Because
yeah, it would be amazing to start a workshop in the US, honestly.
yeah,
right.
but that ties back into this like the like a made to order model. One of the difficulties is one communication and flow down to to the person actually assembling it, right? And sometimes it's too easy for there to be a break in communication, and like so
Yeah.
even like
Yeah.
this this group made to order that we did with the zebra, which actually ended up being better, but we were originally going to do rough out
Yeah.
for the vamps, but they ended up
Right.
doing like skin side. I think
Right.
actually this leather choice, it has very interesting characteristics. Like as you wear it, it's similar to the Cuda. It's mousse, but it's from
Right.
CF Stead. Um, but but there's just too many like kind of breakdowns, potential breakdowns, and then you get a disappointed customer, and you have a
Mhm.
product that you have to figure out what to do with. And then the other thing with that is things take like a lot more time than you think they would, especially with it being like in Mexico. Like I have to like send some hides there, or like maybe there's some specific like sole option that I can't source locally that I have to like buy, in the US and get it there. And it all adds, time. So um I would love to do more of that, but I think it would have to be a more kind of structured group thing, from that, because if you have like if you're making 5 or 10 pairs in a particular makeup, whatever, that's easier to keep track of than 10 pairs each individual has
Sure.
is slightly different. Yeah, so it's just
Yeah.
that,
Sure.
I'm
Sure.
seeing more of that on my end now. I'm like, okay, this makes sense why brands reduce that as
Sure.
they get bigger. So
Yeah.
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 Sure. Mm. I I ask this question not from a point of politics, but from the economics of politics. With tariffs and your boots going in and out, how is it going to affect you cost wise?
uh, uh,
It's a great
I don't
question.
know yet. um,
Yeah, we don't know.
uh, so it's kind of scary. And the other thing too with that is we don't uh we don't have that crazy good margins. You know what I mean? It's not a
Yeah,
Yeah.
cheap boot.
I quite understand that. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
cheap boot, but when you actually add all your like one-off, or not one-off expenses, but all of your incremental expenses along the way,
Yeah.
and we're not even
Sure.
Yeah.
talking about a marketing budget because we basically don't have one,
We
right?
don't.
Sure.
Yeah, we don't have a
Yeah.
marketing budget.
So, but that, and then the idea of a potentially another like bite into that,
Yeah.
but then you increase your price and you're pricing out people. So
Yeah.
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 we're
It's difficult.
don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, as I said, I don't raise it from a point of politics, but from an
Sure, sure.
understanding of what manufacturers will have to face.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We, as a separate sort of subject, and going back to Christine, what you were saying, but it would be great to have a workshop in the US and then control the quality and so on. There's an Australian maker that I interviewed called Jess Wooten, and you might just want to go and have a look at my channel. He runs a small workshop. It's he, his wife, and I think 3 workers in Melbourne, in the east.
Hmm.
And it's not a huge operation. And like you, his margins are very small. And I think he earns like $20 an hour or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's that ability to control. His wife does the clicking. He's teaching somebody to stitch while he stitches, and a couple of people are lasting, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And literally, I think, Mikhail, as you're saying, you're walking around the workshop saying, like, just tighten that a bit, and you
Yeah.
can actually
Yeah.
control that quality. Is that the sort of thing that is your aim?
I don't know that it's necessarily our aim now, but I think that that's one of those things that both Christine and I would want if it becomes like a balance of where you're at. Like, so if it comes to the point where we're selling enough consistently that like, you know, and to a point, like I guess humming along in the sense of like you have some understanding of what your sales might be within a given month, right? And at that point you can make the jump of, hey, if we did it all in house, I know we'd have enough, well, to survive. But yeah, I think that it's both more difficult and more feasible than it sounds, because at the end of the day, you really just need like a curved needle, like outsole
Yeah,
stitcher, which I have,
yeah,
um, and then and some manpower and some people that know what they're doing. That's kind of the
yeah,
hard
Yeah.
part, is finding or training people, especially in the US.
yeah,
But like we're sourcing a lot of our stuff international anyway. Like a lot of our
yeah,
leathers from the UK, and our soles are Vibram, which we've been using now. But so we can get the components here. It's just, it would, like, in an ideal world, having a small workshop would be awesome. that would be like an end goal, but I think there would have to be success in our current model
Yeah.
to be able
Yeah.
to make that jump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to get the capital.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. To
Yeah,
get the capital.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky.
yeah.
Okay, so I guess if we finish off, tell me your last words about where you want to go.
Christine, you want to take this one? Oh no, all right. I'll go first, and then you can go while you gather your
Okay, you
thoughts.
go. Okay.
I want to. This is kind of back to this theme. I want to kind of push the envelope a little bit more. I've been doing a lot more like adding the different panels, like we did like one with like the load and suede and the kudu on the side panels, which I thought was kind of cool. I would love to like push that a little bit more. I want to make. We'd mentioned it earlier. I want to make a pair just in the side zips, just embrace the cowboy boot look and go full quill ostrich
Oops.
for the side zip boots. I think that would have to be either just for myself or a group made to order. That's where I want to push it. I also want to do more of the Vishivanka boots because I personally I love the way it looks and it's so
They're so
interesting and
beautiful,
unique. And then you also open up like the possibilities with all the different embroidery like colors and
colors
designs.
and the matching.
Yeah, that's what I would love
Yeah.
to do. I don't know if it's the thing that's going to sell, but that's what I want to do.
Christine?
Yeah, I think that the zip up boot has been really popular. Those who have gotten a pair of the Vishivanka also are stunned by how beautiful they are. And I'm not just trying to pitch us. Like, I think they're some of the most beautiful boots I've ever seen. I especially love the turmeric color. It's just like the way that it highlights
Gorgeous.
the colors that are inside the embroidery.
I want to find more of that.
Beautiful. Yeah. So I love those as well. We have made some women's prototypes for Boots Gonna Last for Me. And I'm not sure if we're ready to take that leap exactly yet, but we have, experimented with some women's lasts. Of course, like they're still modeled on I guess a men's style in the sense they're not high heels.
Yeah, but the last is it's
the last
very nice.
Is made is a
Right.
female last. And I love the boots I've made so far, that Mikhail has made so far. He made a Jodhpur boot for me. He made a Chelsea boot for me, and I'm about to get my own version of the Vishivanka. So we have a couple of ideas for women's as well. And I would really love to get that going at some point. But it's also a matter of like, we don't want to do too many things all at once because we want to get known for the thing that we do. And so I think that we'll be like steady on the course with our side zip, which we love, and the Vishivanka, and sort of focus on those. And anytime Mikhail is making something that Mikhail will be continuing, I think, making shoes for individuals, but also we have some of the ones that go up on the site from time to time that he has made. So we'll have those always as well, I think.
So if you're going to go primarily at the moment anyway, a group MTO model, that seems to work for you. I'll put a link to your website down below the video. So maybe guys just start gathering emails for newsletters and group MTO invitations and grow from there, hopefully.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And I think definitely, like you said, we'll look into the Kickstarter, because I think that could be an interesting option for us. Like I said, I'm not exactly familiar with how it works. So I have to look into it, but it could be an interesting idea.
Sure. And I think you met Christian Daniel at the show. And Christian started with the Kickstarter. So he started with the Kickstarter. So, touch base.
He's a great dude, but that's part of the such an awesome thing about like this whole community. I met gosh, I cannot think of his name. Kevin, I think from Caswell Boots.
From Caswell,
yeah.
Kevin,
awesome dude, awesome, and like all just like available with information and you know what I mean. Like there's everybody that I've met in the boot world, even other makers, other small brands. Everybody's just been super personable, passionate. It's not like, man, this is my competition, stay away. It's everybody's like, yeah, come on in. There's room for more. It's cool.
It's a great community. It's really great.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's one of the best parts about doing it. And like, yeah, just coming from a totally different world beforehand, I feel also just really grateful to have found this community, so that's a really nice part of it too.
Yeah.
So guys, I want to thank you for your time. It's been a great chat. Great to find out more about you. I was very intrigued when I looked at the website. A little confused, but very intrigued. So thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you so much, Jake.
Terrific.
Yeah.
We'll keep in touch.
Okay.
So there you are, guys. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I always find these interviews very revealing. It's a bit late for me at the moment, so I'm about to switch off the lights and really start to wind down with a cup of tea and maybe a glass of whiskey. So I hope you take care out there, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, of course, and I'll see you next week. See you later.